P. Diddy leaves the Metropolitan Detention Center jail in Brooklyn. New reports say he was taken to the hospital for a few hours last week to get an MRI. We're just now learning about this, though, because Diddy was taken from the jail late at night, actually using the cover of darkness to keep his trip on the down low. So what do we know about this trip? We're going to go through everything we know so far, plus a little more. We're actually going to sit down with Dr. D. Wayne Hendricks, a former corrections officer and deputy warden at MDC, the very jail Diddy's being held at right now. But before we get into all of that, here's a quick recap of how we got here. In September of last year, Diddy was indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Those charges came down after multiple civil suits against Diddy were already filed, accusing him of facilitating a decades-long sex trafficking ring. Post-arrest, the civil lawsuits just keep on coming. Right now, we're actually at more than 40 filed against Diddy. There's an eerie pattern shown throughout all of these civil suits, and the criminal one too, that Diddy or his associates would drug the victims, rape them as part of what he called freak-offs, and recorded it. He then used that recording as blackmail to force the survivors to keep quiet. But let's just keep in mind, all of this is alleged at this point. Diddy has already pleaded not guilty to his federal charges. But just last week, we actually got some new info about those charges in a superseding indictment. To start with the very basics, the feds now say Diddy's alleged sex trafficking scheme dates back to 2004, whereas in the original indictment, it listed 2008. Here's what it says, quote, "From at least in or about 2004 through in or about 2024, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, PD, Love, the defendant, and others, known and unknown, were members and associates of a criminal organization, the Combs Enterprise, or the Enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice." This new indictment also ups the number of victims. At first, only one victim was listed in the indictment, which some believe is Diddy's ex-girlfriend and the first person to file civil suit against him, Cassandra Ventura.
Diddy has recently been caught trying to escape during a medical checkup. Reports suggest he attempted to contact his associates after faking a medical emergency in a bid to break out of prison. Video footage shows Diddy speaking with associates, planning his escape from the detention center late at night after claiming to have a sore knee. This is the same facility where several inmates have reportedly died due to inadequate medical care, and even Epstein was not taken to see a doctor.
Sean Diddy Combs reportedly underwent treatment in a hospital as he continues to await trial on sex trafficking charges. According to Page 6, the 55-year-old was transported from Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, the federal prison where he was sent following his September arrest, late January 30th to undergo an MRI, and was then soon returned to police custody later that night. The outlet cites a source as saying that the medical scan was authorized because his knee was bothering him. E! News has reached out to reps for Diddy and the Federal Bureau of Prisons for comment and has not heard back. The Grammy winner's attorney, Mark Agnafilo, tells TMZ, quote, "I cannot comment on anything related to prisoner movements. Also, I'm not commenting on anything related to possible medical issues." Diddy had shared in a since-deleted Instagram post in 2017 that he had undergone his third knee surgery in a year. The Federal Bureau of Prisons has neither confirmed nor denied the reports about Diddy's hospital visit. A spokesperson for the government agency tells the New York Post, quote, "For privacy, safety, and security reasons, we do not comment on the conditions of confinement for anyone in our custody to include medical status or medical trips." The hospital visit allegedly took place hours after federal prosecutors filed a new criminal indictment against the rap mogul, accusing him of coercing 2 additional women into commercial sex acts. No additional charges are included in the new filing, as the original September indictment had referenced 1 female victim. His lawyer has accused the prosecutors of making a major error in the new indictment. In a statement to E! News January 30th, he says, quote, "The prosecution's theory remains flawed. The government has added the ridiculous theory that 2 of Mr. Combs' former girlfriends were not girlfriends at all, but were prostitutes."
Yet, Diddy was unexpectedly rushed to a hospital in the middle of the night, which is highly unusual since most non-critical procedures, like MRIs, are typically performed during the day. To add to the suspicion, Diddy had been heard discussing plans to escape just weeks earlier. With bail no longer an option, he seems to have resorted to faking a medical emergency as his best remaining choice.
Do not entertain none of this nonsense and nothing over the phone. I'm gonna need you to get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes. The what? All the boxes left over from the pizza. All the boxes. Okay. Make sure you recycle the plastic like we talked about. Yeah. Did Jay reach out yet?
Nah, Bob. He ghosting.
What the f*** is this motherfucker doing? You think shit's sweet now because I'm in here.
It's all good. You about to get out on bail.
Nah, fuck that. Hey, yo, check this out. Need you to reach out to the producer. Let these motherfuckers know there's a release date for that new Netflix movie.
Alright, Pop. It's fucking crazy right now.
Everybody out there quiet as a motherfucker.
Yeah?
Yeah, exactly. We gonna let them have their little fun, but I'm still gonna have the last laugh.
What about all these lawsuits, though, Pop?
Ain't none of them getting shit. I ain't worth nothing. Ain't got shit in my name anyway. Don't even worry about it. Bunch of money hungry and shit.
It's also been reported that Diddy has been trying to contact and intimidate witnesses from within the MDC, though he was forced to stop when the U.S. Marshals intervened. Sources claim his recent call to his associates hinted at this plan. Diddy was recently charged with the sexual assault of 2 more victims and appears to be desperate to destroy evidence. His first attempt was to starve himself, and when that didn't work, he pretended to be mentally ill.
It's now been 1 week since the arrest of Sean Diddy Combs.
Diddy is now at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, a place that's been described as hell on earth. Fox 8's Lisa Evers is at MDC right now on Diddy's life behind bars. Lisa, what are you finding out tonight?
Well, Natasha and Steve, for the first time in his life, Sean Diddy Combs has spent a week behind bars. He's here inside MDC, where he's been since his arrest on Monday night on federal sex trafficking and other charges, to all of which he's pleaded not guilty. There's no VIP section, there is no concierge, only conmen, killers, and kingpins. MDC is so bad, federal judges have questioned the harsh conditions for those here awaiting trial. So bad, I was here 2 years ago during a cold spell, reporting on detainees with no heat, pounding on windows for help. There was even a congressional inquiry. But take the word of a former inmate I spoke with who goes by Esco.
It's terrible. The food is terrible. Of course, the inmates are terrible. The guards are terrible. The conditions are terrible. It's just terrible.
The inmates that you're surrounded around, just in general, a lot of them are brought up on pretty heavy federal indictments, right? So just in terms of the atmosphere there, it's just certainly one that no one wants to be in.
Combs was placed in a special housing unit and on suicide watch, the standard protocol for high-profile celebrity detainees. The disgraced mogul was denied bail by 2 separate judges. His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, asked the court to transfer him to the federal detention section at the Essex County Jail, but the judge deferred to the Bureau of Prisons. Federal trial attorney Philip Hamilton says lockdown can mean a lot less time to prepare your defense.
In terms of fighting their case, it just makes it all the more difficult, because now in terms of you being able to communicate with your attorney, you are at the realms of just what's going on with respect to the facility. Is it on lockdown? Is the facility letting visitors in?
Detainees on suicide watch wear tearaway paper hospital-style garments and rubber shower shoes. The isolation may be the worst part for Combs. It's being done for his protection in the violence-prone facility. He will have no bunkie.
He's probably not going to have any contact with any other inmates. So for him, it's going to be a little different than for a person like me, where I will go in, I will go through process and intake, and then they'll assign me a cell, and I'll have a bunkie or a cellmate, and I'll be in population.
For him to be able to get out at this point, it just doesn't look good.
Now, we reached out to Combs' attorney but did not get a response. We also reached out to the Bureau of Prisons. They confirmed to us that Combs is in fact detained here at MDC. For how
There are rumors about an ace up his sleeve, potentially tied to his political connections. Just weeks before his mansions were raided, Mayor Eric Adams presented Diddy with the key to New York, raising questions about whether the mayor knew about Diddy's activities but still chose to honor him. Now, Diddy is receiving special treatment, and if he requires surgery or any procedure, he may be allowed to leave the detention center and recover at the hospital. The prosecution alleges that Diddy is fabricating his health issues to secure his release. Larry Levine, a former MDC inmate, believes this is part of Diddy's escape plan.
I want to bring in Larry Levine. He is a former federal prisoner who served time at 11 institutions of various security levels in 5 different states, and he now advises people who are about to go to prison. As the founder and director of Wall Street Prison Consultants. And of course, he's a friend of the show. So breaking news right now, Larry, I am just getting word. People Magazine says it's got a source on the inside that tells them that P. Diddy's on suicide watch tonight. Do your sources confer the same information? Are they saying it was possible?
Hey, real quickly, all that commissary stuff, he's not getting any of that because people in the SHU have an abbreviated list. So he's out of luck. No stake for him. Yeah, he is on suicide watch. This guy thought he would have went home. All of a sudden, he didn't get bond. Remember, the first night that he was there, he was like an overnight guest. When they called his bond hearing, now they checked him into the system, and reality has hit him. And I understand that he has a shrink coming by his cell to see him several times a day. And now there's talk about putting him in, it's like a bubble. It's like a cell that has like a plexiglass wall in it where they have inmates watching you. That's actually their job, to keep an eye on the inmates that are on suicide watch. Another error that I guess some warden told you this. There are sentenced inmates there. They're called cadre inmates. They don't have to be white collar inmates, but they're doing maintenance on the building. And the problem why there's a lot of violence there, they have housing units. And they're mixing bank robbers, drug dealers, rapists with white collar people. And this is why Diddy, he can't go into a regular housing unit because somebody will take him out for sure. Somebody's gonna get a lot of street credibility out of this. People that are doing substantial time that know they're never getting out, they'll just kill the guy. No questions asked.
You think that they'd suck up to him because he's got a lot of money, and if he ever does get the commissary options, he would be able to help them.
Some people do because
I gotta wrap it real quick.
Okay, some people do think that Diddy can help them, but this guy's going to be locked up forever. His case will probably take at least 3 years to litigate. He'll stay at MDC. There's rumors that he wants to go to Essex County Jail in New Jersey because he doesn't like MDC. He's a Marshals inmate. There's no way they're going to transfer him back and forth, I don't know, several times a week, 6 Marshals to do it.
Jersey.
He's out of luck.
Listen, I'm going to have you back. I'm going to have you back. I have so many more questions for you, but we've had a lot of breaking news in this show. So Larry Levine, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Judge Aaron Sabian has labeled Diddy as extremely dangerous, ruling that no conditions could ensure the safety of the community. Evidence also shows Diddy instructed his family and defense team to include others on three-way calls to make communications harder to trace. He's also been accused of trying to influence his trial's jury pool and reach potential witnesses.
From a life of parties and open bars to life now behind bars. In the past week, P. Diddy has seen some major lifestyle changes. And now we're getting reports that Diddy isn't eating while in jail. And it could be because he thinks someone's trying to poison his food. Plus, he's been transferred to a protective unit that already houses convicted fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried. So what's it like for a high-profile defendant like Diddy to be locked up in one of the most run-down and violent jails in the U.S.? For that, we'll turn to criminal defense attorney and law and crime legal analyst Imran Ansari, who repped other high-profile defendants like Harvey Weinstein and 50 Cent. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. All right, so big news out of New York, where P. Diddy has been held for more than a week in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. This comes after Diddy's arrest last Monday, following his indictment by a federal grand jury on charges of racketeering conspiracy sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The 14-page indictment lays out some pretty strong claims against Diddy, alleging he's guilty of sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The indictment goes on to allege Diddy showed a pattern of abuse, mostly against women, that included verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, including the use of extensive grooming tactics. There's also mention of something referred to as freak-offs, which are described as elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. During these so-called freak-offs, Diddy would often drug his victims, sometimes without their knowledge, to keep them obedient and compliant. Then, Diddy allegedly required these victims to have sex with prostitutes, and oftentimes, he recorded that too. Again, these recordings were made without the victim's knowledge or consent. These freak-off sessions were facilitated by Diddy's associates, that the indictment refers to as part of the Combs enterprise. These associates would procure the sex workers, book the hotel rooms where these freak-offs would take place, and stock the rooms with necessities like baby oil and lube. Now is a good time to note that when federal authorities executed search warrants at 2 of Diddy's properties, they collected 1,000 bottles of lube and baby oil, which puts into perspective the severity and scope of these freak-offs. Also during these raids, federal authorities collected digital evidence of this alleged illegal activity, and they kind of had a heads up that Diddy was recording some of this. Multiple civil lawsuits filed against Diddy starting in November of last year allege he sexually assaulted the plaintiffs and often recorded it.
The MDC has a history of inmate mismanagement, with several deaths reported. When Diddy first arrived, his lawyers described the facility as hell on earth. Allegedly, Diddy even offered to pay $50 million in bail to get out, possibly to contact witnesses and silence them.
Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, or should we say inmate 37452-054, is facing a living nightmare at New York's Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. A jail described as hell on earth. Violence, drug use, threats to life, and shared showers. No, we're not talking about Diddy's freak-offs. This is just another brutal day inside MDC. In today's episode of the Infographic Show, we'll explore Diddy's new home and his life inside NYC's hellhole jail. Diddy is currently living the counter-life to his hyper-luxurious existence that came crashing to an end in September 2024, when he was charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, and the creation of a criminal enterprise, which included reams of sexual offenses against women. Diddy rapped his way into stardom in the 90s, eventually racking up a net worth of around $1 billion through music, fashion, restaurants, vodka, and TV. In his prime, he held so-called white parties where a who's who of fame and fortune had the opportunity to snort rails from the tanned bodies of call girls. These X-rated shindigs had an adult-only element where guests could indulge their most lurid fantasies. These were marathon orgies where the escorts servicing the VIPs would have to use intravenous drips to recover from days of non-stop sex and rampant drug use. Diddy is now doing hard time in a Spartan prison cell at the MDC, where the only white lines he sees are the ones he's told to stand behind as he strips and is ordered to drop and cough. As the most high-profile prisoner in the USA, everything he does is strictly monitored. His every move is recorded. He can't scratch his nose without someone watching. And you can be sure he won't end up sharing a cell with a muscular thug with hands big enough to screw off human heads. Diddy is currently being held in the Special Housing Unit, aka the SHU, a 23-hour lockdown part of the prison. That means he's purposefully being kept away from the general population, which according to a former warden is because he wouldn't last a minute in the main part of the jail. Not only is he charged with sex crimes, but killing Diddy, according to this warden, will bestow an inmate a badge of honor. Diddy is a dead man walking if anyone can actually get to him. At the very least, he'll have to pay millions in protection money. The question is, can they get to him? We'll come back to this topic soon, but first let's examine his day-to-day existence in a jail that sits somewhere within the 7th circle of hell, the violent part. Wake-up call is 6 a.m. on the dot. when Diddy will open his eyes to 4 bare walls. He probably isn't getting much sleep. The shoe is quiet during the night, but the occasional scream will no doubt wake him from his nightmares. It is also very uncomfortable sleeping without a pillow on a 1.5-inch mattress. This is a man whose $40 million 10-bedroom home, just one of his homes, had a theater, a spa, a beauty salon, and a pool connected to an underground water tunnel. There's likely no natural light in his cell, just a strip light above the furnishings of an iron bed bolted to the floor, next to an all-in-one ensuite sink and toilet. He spends 23 hours a day in this cell. His family has been allowed to see him, and his lawyer has been visiting, but the majority of his days are just him and those 4 walls, plus the odd visit from Kenny the Cockroach. Yes, he probably names them. That's the kind of thing men do in isolation. He's expected to make his bed every day after he awakes, to mop the floor and keep his toilet and sink clean. No doubt he is grateful for these cleaning duties that give him something to do. It might be humiliating for a man who had hordes of household staff, but the alternative is going insane from inactivity. Each morning he receives his breakfast through a small hole in the door. There will be no caviar on offer, but there will be powdered scrambled eggs, cheap white bread, milk, and sweet juice. This is one of 3 meals each day, which all added up by law should give him at least 1,800 calories.
So, do you think Diddy is genuinely sick, or is he just using another tactic to escape? With the special treatment he's receiving, something suspicious is certainly happening. But will the authorities allow him to get away with it, or is he running out of options? Share your thoughts in the comments.